All right. Well, it is so good to be here today. I'm really excited. We've just been in, not only Mozambique, but Madagascar for a month. So we've been really in the bush, and it's been so nice to be here, back in the land of running water and electricity, and showers and things. So it's great to be here today. The thing that the Lord has laid on my heart to share today, in thinking about how our main thing as I coach YWAM, Youth with a Missions church planters around the world, is really, there is no such thing as church planting, okay? That may be a bombshell, but there really isn't biblically. It's making disciples. If you make the right kind of disciples, you're automatically planting churches, because they don't live alone and just hop around like one finger. They're part of a body. And so church planting happens automatically as we make disciples. And as I was praying and thinking about making disciples, I realized that one of the main challenges we have is that all of us have been in the body of Christ for a while. And one of the things that happens to us is things get kind of old hat, and we fall into cultural ways of doing things. We're part of Christendom. And when we go out and try and make disciples, we find unexamined, we're dragging religion along with us. And what we're really supposed to be doing is inviting people into a relationship with a person. And so I wanted to talk about that this morning. The Bible is God's story. And so when we look at the Bible, we're really looking for what's important to him. He's telling his story. When somebody tells a story, you should be able to discover things about them. And in the Bible, if we're looking for what's important to God, then we're looking for the right thing. Now, I noticed on YouTube, I was looking on YouTube the other day, and there's a guy who does the whole book of Acts in 3 minutes. It's fantastic. You should look it up. But we're going to try and cover the entire Bible today in 40 minutes. And so we're a little bit more ambitious than he is. We're going to do an aerial tour, a quick flyover of the entire biblical landscape. And we can't focus on everything. So what we're going to concentrate on in our search is, what is God after? What's his desire? What's his purpose concerning us, concerning humanity? And the book of Hebrews mentions that God has a single unchanging purpose. It says, in order to make the unchanging nature of his purpose perfectly clear to the heirs of what was promised, God confirmed it with an oath. So God has an unchanging purpose. We need to know what that is. It should be hugely important to us. So let's take a look at that unchanging purpose. And amidst the hundreds and hundreds of biblical personalities, I want to concentrate on 5 kind of high points, 5 guys that stand out as having a special relational position with their Creator. And the first one is Adam. Okay, Adam, God's creation. He's God's son in the sense that God provided his Y DNA, the paternal DNA for Adam, didn't come from any man. God created it. He made that DNA helix and breathed it into him. It was transmitted by aerosol, I guess. He breathed it in. So Adam is God's son. And then there's another guy. They had a special relationship. God walked in the garden with him. There was intimacy. Another guy, Abram. The Bible calls him the friend of God. Pretty high title, right? God's friend. The guy God liked hanging out with. We have Moses. Moses was God's man, and he was the emissary. He was God's mouthpiece. David, a man after God's own heart. And then, of course, Jesus, the Son of God, and the second Adam, according to Paul, the second Adam. So all 5 of these guys had a real and unreligious relationship with the living God, with their Creator. And unlike most of the people, the rest of the people in the Bible, most of their contemporaries, the people that lived at the same time as them, most people came to God in a very religious grid throughout the whole Bible. But these 5 guys were very different in the sense that that wasn't their experience. They had a different kind of relationship with God. Now, we'll start off with Adam. We're going to cover the whole Bible, don't worry. And this is pre-history in the sense that history is written down. So we don't know exactly what year Adam happened. You know, some people like to add up the genealogies and they say, oh, it was like 6,000 BC. Well, whatever. Or you talk to a scientist and they say billions and billions. It really doesn't matter to me. I know it happened just like God said it happened. So I don't need to find it on the calendar and say Adam was created on Wednesday, the 25th of July or something. Anyway, creation, you have the Garden of Eden, that perfection, God saying it's good, it's good, it's good, everything he created. Then he makes man, and he said it was very good. God is so pleased in this special creation. And Adam, the word Adam is the Hebrew word for mankind. Okay, ha-adam is mankind. And so God made all mankind. It just happened to be focused and concentrated in one body for a while until it multiplied, you know? Just like if you have a rabbit, you have a rabbit, but you know, if you leave it around long enough and there's other rabbits, you'll have lots of rabbits. So that's what happened. And I want to introduce that we're going to be using kind of an analogy today for all of these things. And so here we go. This is going to be Adam. We're just using a banana for people today because it'll be easier. You'll see. If somebody wants a blanket, there is one extra. I was hogging it there. And I think I'll do this. There we go. Okay, so here is the Adam banana. Hopefully you can see that. There we go. And they had a perfect relationship. God and Adam had a perfect relationship. They walked in the garden. They had intimate fellowship. They hung out together. And yet, as we all know the story, Genesis chapter 3, that relationship is broken. Okay? It's broken by Adam's choice to turn away from God, to turn away from relationship and sin. And out of that broken relationship come very quickly in a few verses in Genesis chapter 3, three things that have dogged and destroyed all of our lives ever since that point. And that's guilt and shame and fear. Okay, so when God comes into the garden looking to walk with his treasured, cherished creation, his son Adam, he had to say, Adam, where are you? Adam was hiding in the bushes. Adam had made clothes for himself out of leaves. Pretty pathetic, but he did because of shame. He was afraid to meet God because he knew he'd sinned. He felt guilty. He tried to blame shift. It was the woman you gave me. No, it was the snake. And the relationship was broken. Now, we're talking about what is God after? He's after relationship. He had what he wanted for however long that was in the garden, and then he lost it. Can you imagine God losing something? But he did, because free will had to be part of it. It wasn't a relationship if it was forced. And we're going to find out time and time again that people's choice isn't always what God wants, but then God has another plan to get back to what he wants. So, basically, what Adam says to Adam and Eve, what God says to Adam and Eve after he discovers what's happened and talks to them about it, is he gives them a promise of complete restoration. That guilt and shame and fear had replaced relationship with God, and God says, I will fix this. He says it in a lot of words, the seed of the woman, going to crush the head of the serpent, blah, 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 blah. I'll just simplify it, because we're trying to make it through the whole Bible. I will fix this. That's God's promise. And so Adam the man literally becomes mankind. And one people or nation, they are all one people together until the Tower of Babel. And in the Tower of Babel, you end up getting 70 nations, okay, out of the one. I don't have really 70 bananas. Sorry about that. But afterwards, somewhat less than 70 of you can have bananas. Okay, there we go. Yeah, well, that's how it was on planet Earth, overpopulation, running rampant, yeah, okay. Here we go, lots of bananas. Wow, it's going to go all the way down to its bottom, but there we go. All right. So, and they had all these nations created, and at the Tower of Babel, when many different languages were made up, and so God's got this problem because now he's got lots of people, and they're divided into lots of nations, and he doesn't have relationship with any of them. None of them. None of them have a relationship with God. So what does God do? Well, he picks out a single banana, okay? As a Shemite, living in tents. He's basically a Bedouin. His name's Abram. And he picks out this one banana among all the other bananas. And he says, hey, Abram, I've got a deal for you. I'm going to bless your socks off. I'm going to bless you in every way that you could possibly imagine. You're going to be rich. You're going to be famous. You're going to have endless numbers of children, blah, 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 all of these blessings. And you will be a blessing to all the nations of the world, to all the other bananas. You're going to be the banana who brings blessing to all the bananas. It's a really, really good deal. I mean, no one would pass it up. This is in Genesis chapter 12. And so this septuagenarian banana, this old banana, gets this incredible promise. And he's literally going to be a new kind of banana with a covenant from a covenant God. And so God tells him to mark this promise, to mark this change, that he's a new kind of banana, a different kind of banana. And he asks him to cut a little piece of his banana skin off. Okay, so we're keeping this family friendly today. And so Abraham is a new kind of banana here. Among all the bananas of the world, he is a cut banana, the first of the cut bananas. God initiates this friendship based on a promise. It's not based on a religion. God is initiating a relationship here. It has nothing to do with Abraham's behavior. Did Abraham get it wrong after he became a cut banana? Yeah, he lied to people. She's my sister, not my wife. Here, take her home. All sorts of things. He did all sorts of, slept with the slave woman, made the Arabs, made the news of our world today, basically, way back then. All sorts of problems created and everything, but it wasn't based on his behavior. It was based on God's choice of relationship, And so it was grace, pure grace from the very beginning. Well, moving on, 500 years passed. See, Abraham was in 2000 BC. Now we're at 1500 BC. 500 years have gone by. And Abraham's people are mixed in with the other bananas. They're actually enslaved by one other banana nation called Egypt. And God raises up another friend. Moses was called into relationship by his creator with a burning bush. Now, Abraham's descendants then had become a large group, but they were not united, and they were unaware of the promise, and they were enslaved. Moses and God freed Israel from physical slavery, but weren't able to get the pagan shackles out of their minds. Okay? You can take the Israelite out of Egypt, but it's not so easy to take Egypt out of the Israelite. And that's what you see in the book of Exodus and the rest of the books of Moses. So Moses then, according to God's instruction, Moses has this one nation among all the other nations take on, God's promise to Abraham. And so here they are. There's the Israelites. They're the cut banana people. They're the first of the cut bananas. And there we go, even further down. Okay, so there's the Israelites. And there's only one nation among all the nations of the world that are the cut banana people. Now, Moses tried to introduce them to relationship with God. He really worked at it. He wanted them to have a relationship with God because that's what he had. He didn't know any religion, He had known the Egyptian religions growing up, but he had relationship with God. He talked to him. And he wanted the Israelites to have that. He wanted the cut banana people to have that. But they completely rejected knowing God. They didn't want to know God. They said as much. And after an attempt to make God into a golden cow, which was an Egyptian idol, in fear, remember fear came in Genesis 3. In fear, they refused God's presence. They said, no way, we're not going up on the mountain, we're not going near the mountain, you go up and talk with God. They demanded intermediaries. They wanted a priesthood. They wanted a religion like the other nations. They wanted a rules-based religion so they'd know how to behave so God would stay away from them and not hurt them. That's what they asked for, and that's what they got. The religion was a device to manage their guilt and their shame. That's what religion is. It doesn't matter if you're a Hindu, a Buddhist, a Muslim, or a Christian. Religion is just a shame and guilt management tool. And that's what they got. God gave them what they wanted. They said to Moses, you speak to us, not God. So God gave them what they wanted rather than what he wanted. And you're going to see that happen again and again. He didn't get what he wanted with them. He didn't get relationship. They got a religion. And he designed the rules, they were called commandments, to prove that it couldn't be done. That what they were asking for was impossible. Isn't that funny? It was designed for failure. You're thinking, oh no, I don't think so. There's all those great commandments in the Old Testament and everything. Read the New Testament. Paul says the whole thing was designed to prove you couldn't do it. Try your best, and at the end, you're going to call out for mercy and grace because you can't keep the rules. That's why God did it that way, because he was never after a bunch of rule keepers. He was after relationship. He was trying to bring them to the point where they realized this wasn't going to get them what they wanted. So there's just no saving yourself. Now, God has a sense of humor. He forbid the cut banana people to eat the most delicious meat he'd created, pork. Bacon. So that's kind of funny, right? Oh, you want a religion? You can't eat bacon. That had to be a big downer when Moses brought the law down the mountain and there was this bacon provision. They were just, darn. Wait, is there a choice B? So another thing is that he told them to make the Ark of the Covenant because he still wanted presence among them. And so the Ark of the Covenant is a wooden box overlaid with gold. It's roughly a square meter, a little bit less. I didn't do all the conversions. In feet, it's 2.5 by 3, so it's roughly a square meter. Inside were the tablets of the law, that was covered by this lid. The lid had a crown around it, and it was made of solid gold and topped with 2 cherubim. You can see them there. Okay, on the lid, these 2 angels with their wings, and that was called the mercy seat. In the cut banana language, this was throne of grace, okay? In cut banana-ese, they called it the throne of grace. And that's where the blood was spilled. The blood of the sacrifice would be spilled on the lid. It must have been messy looking, It looks so beautiful in all our pictures. We never show it all covered with dried blood. But that's what they did, and they didn't go in there with a toothbrush afterwards and clean it up. You left the blood there because you definitely wanted the blood covering up the law, right? You don't want God looking down into that box and seeing the law with no blood covering our sin. So now who sits on the ark? God does. It's the throne of grace. This is the presence of God would hover over the ark. It's the very place where God concentrated his presence in the Old Testament. And he's with them. Emmanuel, God with us. He was with them at the ark, but without relationship because they'd rejected relationship. They didn't want relationship. Now, he didn't force himself. Love doesn't force itself. He didn't force himself on them. They had the Holy of Holies, and the ark was unseen except for once a year by one guy. The high priest would go in there with a rope tied around his leg. There was a curtain that, so here you have The ark is there in the most holy place, and there's a veil, a curtain there, and all the religious stuff takes place out here. But once a year, the high priest would go in here and pour the blood. And he had a rope around his leg because in case he died, he didn't have a relationship with God, so they didn't know what was going to happen. They'd want to pull him outside because, you can imagine what happens. If he drops dead and you forgot the rope thing, then you have to go in and get him, and then you drop dead. Now, it would just pile up until all the people were dead, or they'd just have to make a new one somewhere else far away from the stench. Anyway, this religion gets you doing weird things. Time passes. 400 years of this. This is Moses' tent, or Moses' tabernacle. This is a tent within a tent within a tent, okay? So this is the most holy place is like the middle tent. Now, 400 years pass, Eli is high priest. And his sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are the wicked clergy. They're the religious leaders of the cut banana people. They want to ensure victory in a battle against the neighboring uncut banana tribe. And so they run and drag out the ark. And they said, now we have God leading the army, we can't lose. They drag God into the battle with them, except the cut bananas do lose, and they lose the ark also. They get totally beaten, and they lose 30,000 troops, and the high priest's stupid sons, and the war. Okay? The ark is taken off to the Gaza Strip as a war trophy, where the victors stage a wild victory celebration. The cut bananas think that their enemy has got God. They got the ark. They took God from us. Oh no, because they didn't have a relationship with him, so God is the box, basically. Eli drops dead when he gets the news, and that's where the ark stops. That's where it stays. And God forsook the tabernacle of Moses at Shiloh and delivered his glory into the hands of uncut bananas. That's what the Bible says. Dagon, the fish god of these uncut banana tribe, ends up repeatedly worshiping on his face before the ark. And plagues and hemorrhoids break out. Now, if you had a choice, you'd choose plagues over hemorrhoids, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, they got both of them, so it was a really bad deal. And so they pass it on to another city. It's like Gaza gave it away to Ashdod or something. And the same thing happens. And they pass it around for a while. Then they built a wooden cart and hitched it to some oxen, and they sent it home. They sent it homeward. And it comes to a cut banana village. Now, these cut bananas get really excited. They rejoice wildly, and they throw a party, and they break up the cart, and they burn the cows, the oxen, as a sacrifice, and they put the ark on a rock, and then they want to see how God is doing. He's been on vacation, and he's been gone, and who knows what these uncut bananas did. They probably took our good stuff from out of the box. Let's check. So they open the ark. This is an incredibly bad idea. Raiders of the Lost Ark actually happened a long time before the Nazis, because their faces melted, they died, everybody in the village died. It was really 70 people just blew up. Why? Well, what's in the ark? Inside the ark, along with like Aaron's staff and some other tchotchkes that they had collected over the years, there are the broken tablets of the law. So they take the cover, which has dried blood on it, even after all these years, take it off the ark, and exposed to heaven is the law. And these guys are dancing around, having a party, and the law is there, and they're there, and judgment breaks out. And this is bad news. You do not want to show God the law that you asked for and have him measure you by it, because they're not living in accordance of it. No one ever could. So God had covered the law with the mercy seat out of love and compassion. Removing that covering invoked the law without mercy. And that is when faces start to melt and folks burst into flame and explode. The law kills. Now, they cart the ark off to a town of the cut bananas called Kiriath Yearim. And Kiriath Yearim, it stays there for 20 years in this guy's house. It blesses his house. He's really smart. He doesn't open it. Okay, I guess it had the guest bedroom or something, but he leaves it pretty much alone, and it blesses his family to have it there. And this guy Abinadab enjoys it for 20 years. Samuel grows up. He leads the cut banana people as prophet and judge, and eventually the people demand a king. Now, not only do they want a religion like every other nation, they want a king like every other nation. They so don't want relationship with God that they don't even want to relate to him through a prophet like they have been. They want a king. They want to be like everybody else. They want to be like the uncut bananas. And so they get the king. God is gracious. Once again, he gives them what they want. He gives them the king they deserve, Saul. And they get to serve under King Saul. Samuel warns them, you're not going to like it, but anyway, here you go. And during the whole time, the tabernacle of Moses' tent, is empty of the presence of God. The ark has been gone for years and years and years by this point. But the religion continues to function just fine, with clergy and priests and incense and sacrifice. You can imagine, not one thing changed. The high priest would go into the holiest place every year with a rope around his leg. It's an empty room, but who knows except for him, right? He's the only one in there. So they just go through the ritual, because that's what religion is about. It's about replacing relationship with rituals, checking all the boxes, making sure you do everything just right. Well, they do the whole thing, everything except God. At some point, we don't know why, maybe for better satellite reception, they moved it to a hill called Gibeon from Shiloh. Now, nobody sought the ark of God during the days of Saul. Nobody cared about the presence of God. Now it's 1000 BC. Some time has passed, and we have a young man who has a passion in his heart for God. He wanted to bring the ark back and give it a place of honor. After he became king, he sought to bring the ark to his new capital of Jerusalem. And he gets the people together. They go out to Kiriath Yearim, and they build a wooden cart for the ark. And this is a good thing, right? He's bringing it back. Well, they're bringing the ark to Jerusalem, and they're having a full-blown Pentecostal worship jamboree along the road. And the ark comes to a threshing floor, and you know what happens at threshing floors, right? The grain gets separated from the chaff, the waste products. And it bounces a little, and it starts to fall. The animals stumble, and Uzzah, the son of Abinadab, reaches out to steady the ark. You know, he's used to it. It's been in his house his whole life at this point, 20 years. He reaches out to steady the ark, and bam, he drops dead. And David's afraid, and he instantly reconsiders the plan for bringing the ark home. And they hit the pause button. Now, why did God do this? Why did God do this? David was angry about it. He's like, what? Why did you break out against us like this? Well, here's the thing. You're not going to drag God around on something you made yourself. Whether it's a wooden cart that you built in a shop, or a ministry, or anything that you think that you can carry God around in, if it's made by human hands, God's not interested. The ark was actually designed with these rings on the side of it, and poles were supposed to go there, and it was supposed to be carried on the shoulders of consecrated men. People God made, his creations. God will only be carried around in the vessels he has made, and not in the things that we make. Too often, we create things. I mean, that's what religion is. It's a way to box God up and carry him around. So, David went back and did some more research, and God had commanded the ark be carried on these poles, and so he figured that part out. And David picks a hill in Jerusalem, and it was the hill called Zion, and it's elevated above all the surrounding hills, and that's where his palace was already, on the hill of Zion. So he's bringing the ark to his backyard. Now, he could have turned towards Shiloh. The ark stayed at this threshing floor of Araunah. Shiloh was one direction, Jerusalem was the other, a distance of about 6 miles. And David decided to take the ark to his backyard, not to the Holy of Holies that was still there. All the priests that were ready had the incense, had the sacrifices, had all the furniture, except for the ark. He didn't take it there. He said, how can I bring the ark of God to my own place? And so he takes it to his backyard, and it tells us about this in Chronicles 25, 1 Chronicles 15 and 16. After David had constructed buildings for himself in the city of David, he prepared a place for the ark of God. And he pitched a tent for it. They brought the ark of God and set it inside the tent that David had pitched for it, and they presented burnt offerings and fellowship offerings before God. After David had finished sacrificing the burnt offerings and the fellowship offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord. He gives them some raisin cakes and some oil and some bread and sends them home. And this is really interesting because this is the last sacrifices that are done in front of the ark for 40 years. 40 years. David, it says, prepared a place for God. He made a small, simple tent, like an army tent. And he was a soldier before he was a king. He gave God an army tent, and he put the ark in there. And there's no Holy of Holies. There's no sacred curtain made out of special dolphin tongue cloth or whatever. I didn't look it up in Leviticus. I just remember it was something weird that they made it out of. There's nothing, okay? It's just a tent, and it's open, and people are worshiping there, okay? This time, all the sanctified Levites bring the ark, and the people are unified in praising, and David strips down to his priestly underwear and dances before the ark as it goes up Zion. This is the highest moment of David's life, the most wonderful manifestation of God with his people since Eden. And so now we have two tabernacles. Tabernacle means tent in the cut banana language. We have two tabernacles at the same time. You have Mount Gibeon, where the priests are leading sacrifices, slinging blood and the brazen altar and passing out the bulletins, holding regular worship services and special ones on holidays, and going through all of the rituals perfectly, except for one thing. There's no ark. The presence of God has been gone for ages. Does this bother them? No. Religion does perfectly well whether God shows up or not. Okay, we can go through our services really well. We can complete our agenda whether God shows up or not, right? So religion's the only business that can be out of business and still be in business. They're fulfilling what they understand to be their religious obligations and duties, and they're keeping their careers afloat. And the cut banana people can't see that the Holy of Holies is empty and bare because the veil is closed and the main court is far off. Now, only 6 miles away on another hill, we have a full-on cult. Mount Zion, pandemonium. People are singing, they're playing instruments, they're dancing, they're worshiping loudly and wildly. It's total freedom. And the ark is there, and it's unveiled. Not just the priests, but for everyone. Face-to-face intimacy with God, and no one is dying. Take a moment to soak that in. People are just coming up in front of the ark and they're worshiping. There's no sacrificing going on. No one's dying. The presence of God is there and he's with his people. God has been waiting for this since the garden. Since the garden. Adam, where are you? And now he's getting what he wants. God's finally getting what he wants, and it took David to do it. Well, there's no blood sacrifices on Mount Zion. On the day of dedication, there was one on the day of dedication and never again. And the worship and singing went on 24/7, every day, on the hour, for 40 years. David wrote about the people who stand by night in the house of the Lord and the different watches of the worshipers that would come. They were divided up. They had times that they could come and lead the worship in front of his tent. And then they had the night shift of worshipers. And what is this? This is the new covenant smack dab in the middle of the Old Testament. For the first time since the garden, God is face to face with his people, unveiled. And David himself would nestle right up next to the ark under the shadow of the wings of those cherubim. He pulls out his pen and he writes, "He that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. For you have been my help. In the shadow of your wings I will sing for joy." All of your psalms were written right here. You have to be pretty close to the ark to be in the shadow of the wings, don't you? As the sun shines through the tent. David was intimate with God. He was intimate with God. All of those passages about Zion that we sing, that's because God is there. That's in the Psalms. You have come to Mount Zion in Jesus Christ. Liberty, freedom, joy, and an experience of God's presence. Now on Mount Gibeon, all they had was religion and ritual. Now sadly, David's son Solomon builds a stone temple to replace Moses' tent. And David's tent is swept away and forgotten. It's replaced by a new Holy of Holies, and the ark disappears inside here basically forever. Except for the high priest for a while, no one sees it, and then the Babylonians take it off and it's never seen again. Now God speaks to the cut banana prophet named Amos, and this is in 500 BC. And he makes an amazing promise. Apparently God enjoyed the intimacy of his friend David's tent. And so in 500 BC, God speaks to Amos and says, "In that day, I will restore David's fallen tent. I will repair its broken places, restore its ruins, and build it again as it used to be, so that they may possess the remnant of Adam," mankind, Ha'adam, "and that all the nations that bear my name, declares the Lord, who will do these things." I have the Hebrew word here for you because it's really interesting. The Hebrew word for Adam, I already told you, means mankind. But when they were translating, when the Jewish scholars were translating the Old Testament into Greek, they came across this word and they said, I don't think God really wants to save all mankind. He only wants to save cut banana people. So they translated this word Edom, which in Hebrew you can do because it's 3 letters. There's no vowels in Hebrew. And so they were like, yeah, Adam, Edom, it could be either way. I'm sure God only cares about Edom because they're sort of close to us as neighbors. But he doesn't want to save all mankind. That's just crazy talk, And so it's really interesting. We'll see later that this gets corrected. But in the Greek translation of the Old Testament, it actually says Edom there. Now, 500 years pass after Amos's prophecy, and God keeps his Genesis 3 promise to Adam and his Genesis 12 covenant with Abraham in Jesus, in the person of Jesus. I will fix this. Jesus is God's son like Adam, no human father. His paternal DNA was created and implanted by God himself, and he is called the second Adam. This is literally mankind rebooted. This is how God is going to fix our broken nature, the guilt, shame, and fear, is through Jesus. He's really literally giving us a new start with a new Adam. Jesus fixed the problem of relational loss and separation, the sin problem, by carrying all the sin and the brokenness in his sinless life, body, and blood, and pouring them out willingly, destroying sin and restoring everything the first Adam had thrown away. Jesus was a cut banana from the 8th day of his life on this planet. All of Jesus' followers during his life were cut bananas. They thought him to be the promised cut banana Messiah. But the religious leaders were the ones who had Jesus executed. The leaders of the cut banana religion sentenced him to death. In fact, the actual death sentence was because Jesus said, "See this temple? I'm going to bring it down. Not one stone will be left upon another. Now we think about that and we go, oh yeah, it's because the Romans destroyed it later and Jesus was just prophesying. I think Jesus was saying more than that. You see this religion that keeps us from relationship? I'm bringing it down. I'm going to destroy it. There's not going to be any veil. There's not going to be any division, any separation. You're going to be intimate with God. That's what my life is about. And they killed him for it, unwittingly making it all possible, making it so that God could fix it. Now, when Jesus died, God expressed his opinion of the separation represented by the Holy of Holies. And the curtain was torn from top to bottom, exposing an empty room devoid of ark or presence. After Pentecost, they gathered around a dinner table where a kosher dinner was set to have real, intimate fellowship and relationship with God and with one another. Something new was happening. They weren't using the temple. They were using a dinner table in a house. They were God's family. They were filled with his Spirit. And something disturbing began to happen. First Peter, and then later Barnabas and Paul began to bring many regular uncut bananas into relationship with God. God sealed the acceptance of these uncut outsiders by putting his Spirit into them, just as he had with the first believers on Pentecost. This breaks all the rules. Right? I mean, God is breaking his own rules at this point. Cut bananas aren't even allowed to be in the same house, much less eat with uncut bananas. Okay, so now they're all Christians together, and this is a big problem. They don't know what to do. There's no way that God expects them to fellowship in the same house church with uncut bananas, right? I mean, they just can't even imagine this. Well, that brings us to 50 years after Jesus, 50 AD, and the Council of Jerusalem. The situation had reached the boiling point with a banana-cutting faction following Paul around, trying to insist that the uncut bananas get, well, cut. And so in Acts chapter 15, in the NBSV, New Banana Standard Version, some men came down from Judea to Antioch and were teaching the uncut banana brothers, unless you are cut according to our religious rules, you cannot be saved. This brought Paul and Barnabas into sharp dispute and debate with them. So Paul and Barnabas were appointed, along with some other believers, to go up to Jerusalem to see the apostles and elders about the question. James, Jesus' half-brother, was the leader of the Jerusalem Mother Church. James is a Bible scholar and zealous for the law, especially the special banana skin reduction principles. The leaders of Jesus' ecclesia meet in Jerusalem then to decide the issue. And they had to really come to grips with this problem. Right away it comes up. Then some of the particularly rigid cut banana believers stood up and said, those from uncut banana nations must be cut and required to obey the law of Moses. Can you imagine? I mean, we'd have to go and cut all these bananas. Oh, look, the end fell off. That didn't happen much in real life, but every once in a while, I'm sure it did. Anyway, it wasn't a desired outcome. So they wanted everybody cut, or you couldn't follow Jesus. Okay? So the apostles and the elders met to consider the question, and witnesses were called. The first witness is Peter, and he tells again of his rooftop revelation. Who are you to call unclean what I have called clean? And then the response to that was a bunch of uncut bananas, from Rome, immediately followed Jesus. While he was preaching, they got filled with the Holy Spirit, and suddenly you had Spirit-filled uncuts. Wow, what a concept. And Peter reminds them they are saved by grace just as we are. And that's his testimony at the council. Then they call Paul and Barnabas. Paul and Barnabas share numerous accounts of a number of believers from many different uncut nations who, after they received God's Spirit, an intimate relationship with God, also received God's Spirit, an intimate relationship with God. No cutting or other religious laws were imposed, and God didn't seem to care. They weren't observing Sabbaths. They weren't observing the feasts. They weren't fasting, new moons, all of these things. God fills them with his Spirit. These Gentile dogs, these uncut bananas in the minds of the original believers. Well, that's the thing. James is hearing all of this and he's thinking, wait a minute, this can't be right. God's breaking his own rules. He's the one who made these rules. He can't break it. Wait a minute. This isn't the first time God's broken his own rules. And he remembered Amos's 500-year-old prophecy about David's fallen tent. The ark with no covering. This is not the first time God threw out the rules to get intimacy. When they had finished, James stood up. Brothers, listen to me. Simon has told us how at first God showed his concern by taking from the uncut bananas a people for himself. The words of the prophets are in agreement with this, as it is written. After this, I will return and I will rebuild David's fallen tent. Its ruins I will rebuild and I will restore it. And the remnant of men may seek the Lord, and all the uncut bananas who bear my name, says the Lord, who does these things that have been known for ages. It's my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for these uncut bananas who are turning to God. That's what James said. The Jerusalem Council concluded that no religious barriers would bar the way for uncut bananas who desired relationship with their Creator through God. Through Jesus Christ. They wrote to the uncut banana churches and they invited them to share table fellowship with cut banana believers as long as they promised to serve from a list of culturally sensitive foods and keep out some of the difficult menu items like strangled meat, blood sausage, repurposed pagan sacrificial meat, and they also asked them to observe proper etiquette at the table, no orgies. I'm not sure. I really don't think that was a problem in the uncut banana churches at that time. I think that was a prejudice in the minds of the Jewish believers. They figured, well, they're Greeks. They must be having orgies at church, So I'm sure when they got this letter, they were like, they think we do that? That's funny. Anyway, this is when the gospel was set free from religious chains. God was finally getting what he wanted since the Garden of Eden. Relationship with his human children. All of them. Let's conclude in contrasting religion and relationship, okay? Religion is rules that are carved on stone. Relationship, oh boy, it's only going to do one. Oh, there we go. Okay. A relationship is written on human hearts. Religion is go-betweens and priests. Relationship is a royal priesthood with direct contact. Religion is obligations. God gives us all these obligations. We have to do them, check all the boxes. Relationship is joy. We're motivated by joy. It's out of love that we obey him. Religion, you earn salvation. In relationship, salvation's a gift. In religion, it's behavior-based. Relationship is grace-based, just like it was with Abraham, just like it was with Adam. Religion's a sin management system. Relationship is a brand new life with guilt and shame nailed to the cross of Jesus Christ. Religion is distance from God. Relationship is intimacy with God. You couldn't be more opposite. Religion is responsibilities. All these responsibilities you feel, oh, God gave me these responsibilities. Relationship is the opposite. God gives us an ability to respond. It's the opposite of responsibilities. He gives us opportunities we can walk into. We can joyfully follow him. Religion is should and should not. Relationship is invitation and opportunity. When my wife and I discovered this, we realized that should had crept into our conversation a lot. You should do this or we should do this. And Louise started reminding me that I shouldn't say that. She said, stop shooting on me. So, sounds shocking at first, but it's a really good thing to remember. Don't should on each other because should is religion. And relationship isn't about should. It's an invitation, an opportunity. Religion's external. It's like clothing and cultural, whereas relationship is internal. It's in the heart, and it's universal. It has nothing to do with culture. Religion is God's presence is veiled. Relationship is face-to-face. Religion is fear. Relationship, perfect love, casts out all fear. Religion actually means, from the Latin, religare, to bind again tightly. That's the actual definition of religion, is to bind again tightly. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed. If, like those cut bananas at Mount Sinai, you want distance and separation from God in the form of religion, sacrifice, and priests, then okay. God will let you have it your way. He's like that. He gives us our way, even when it's not good for us. Like it says, and God turned them over to the desires of their hearts. It wasn't a good deal, but he did. God will let you have it your way, and the religious choices abound, even in this city, in Cape Town. You can have a lot of different religions, even Christian religion. But if you want perfect love, an intimate relationship with your Creator as a precious daughter or son, it's yours for the asking. And the law is no more. Jesus nailed it to the cross. There is no barrier. The curtain's gone. God's presence is available to us. God fixed it. He promised he would. He told Adam, I'm going to make it like it was. I'm going to fix it. The seed of the woman will come, crush the serpent's head. God fixed it. And it matters nothing if your banana is cut or uncut. All the barriers are gone. Paul says there's no male or female. There's no Jew or Gentile. There's no cut banana or uncut banana. Okay, God has taken away the barriers. God has been looking forward to hanging out with you from the very beginning. It's always been his desire. When he was talking with Adam, he could see you in the future, and he looked forward to relationship with you. God is excited about you, and he loves you. And the disciples you make, if you can introduce them to that God, to a relationship with that God, and resist all the religious baggage that we carry around with us, and throw off those burdens. Don't introduce them to new people. No one needs religion. They really don't. It's chains, and those chains have been broken. Then from the very beginning, their walk will be a walk of relationship. Don't make him wait another minute for what he wants. Let's pray. Father God, I just thank you for your word and how all the way through it, you have been calling us and calling us and calling us into relationship. And I thank you so much that what you want is what we need and want so badly. And that's this relationship of love with us, that you're calling us into something that's going to save us and heal us and restore us and give us an eternity of joy. Lord, just forgive us for all the things that we've substituted for that, all of the ways that we try and make ourselves feel all right at a distance from you. And let us come into your presence and strip all of that stuff away and help us to make disciples who from the very first day know you and love you. Help us to remember that we're not introducing people to Christianity. We're introducing people to Jesus Christ, to relationship with you. Thank you, Lord Jesus. I just wanted to mention that I have a few copies over there. I had the suitcase import them, but I've written 2 books. And the first one is called There's a Sheep in My Bathtub. And it's a story of what God did in Mongolia as we introduced the Mongolians for the first time in human history to relationship with the living God. And how it turned into a movement, and now there's tens of thousands and thousands of Mongolian believers where there were 0 in the beginning of 1990, absolutely none. So if you want to read about that, there's miracles, there's fencing, fighting, escapes, giants. No, that's another movie. But anyway, there's lots of exciting stuff in the book. You'll love it. It's a great read. Floyd McClung said, I love a good story, and this is a really good one. You won't be able to put it down. And my guarantee is that if you read There's a Sheep in My Bathtub, you will laugh and you will cry. Real tears will run down your cheeks. If both of those things don't happen, I will cheerfully refund whatever you paid for it, and you can keep the book. So you can just send me an email. My email's in the book. The other one is the A to Z of Near-Death Adventures, and this is 26 terrifying and thrilling tales of how I've almost died in these years of serving the Lord. And even before that, if you're set out to be a church planter among unreached peoples, it's like you've painted a target on your back for the enemy. And the book is a testimony of how faithful God is for rescuing me time and time and time again. So if you like exciting stories that are short, I mean, you could keep this book on the back of the toilet and just read it when you're there, and you would eventually make it through the whole thing because the stories are short. So both of those are available also as ebooks. You could get them immediately that way, or I have a website there that you can order them from, and it's free shipping to South Africa. So the prices are their prices. If you buy them over here, they're 200 rand a piece, and we have whatever we have there. So thank you very much. Thanks for your time.